We are standing here outside McNutt Hall, which is home to our admissions office. My name is Mariya and I am a 25. What that means is that I'm graduating in the year 2025. So at Dartmouth, we like to go by our graduation year rather than the traditional freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, because it gives us some continuity during our time here at Dartmouth. So I applied as a 25, I'll graduate in the year 2025, and at my 50-year reunion, I will still be a 25. And it makes it really fun for us to run into alumni out in the world, and you can ask them what their year is, and you know exactly what that means. So I'm a 25. I'm from the Bay Area in California. I study sociology and education with a minor in Spanish. And when I'm not giving tours, I'm very involved with the arts on campus through a cappella and dance. I also do work with the Dartmouth Center for Social Impact, and I'm a teacher's assistant in the Upper Valley.
Hi, I'm Simon. I'm a 24 here at Dartmouth. I use he, him pronouns. I'm originally from Lakewood, Colorado. I'm majoring in linguistics and minoring in English and anthropology. When I'm not giving tours on campus, I'm also a senior fellow in the admissions office. I've done various research and teaching assistant jobs in the linguistics department. I'm involved with the Dartmouth College Marching Band and Gender Inclusive Greek Life as well.
Hello, my name is Emil and I'm a Dartmouth tour guide. A little bit more about myself. Here at Dartmouth, I study art history and computer science. A few of the things I'm involved in outside of class and apart from being a tour guide include staff photography at the Dartmouth, which is our on-campus newspaper. I work at the Hood Museum of Art, our art museum here on campus, doing social media work and curatorial work. I'm the managing editor for the Dartmouth Apologia, Dartmouth's Christian Journal of Thought. As well, I do undergraduate research in the art history department. I'm so excited to take you on this virtual tour of Dartmouth's campus, and I hope that you get to explore some of the things that make Dartmouth a really special place.
Hi everyone, welcome to Dartmouth. I'd like to introduce myself before we get started. My name is Michaela, I'm a 25. I'm originally from London, England. I now live here in the United States. I'm majoring in anthropology modified with global health and neuroscience. When I'm not giving tours or doing anything admissions related, I'm training with my club basketball team or the club rowing team. I manage the women's varsity basketball team here. I'm also a SIBS mentor, which is a part of the Dartmouth Social Impact. I'm a part of Dartmouth EMS, which is an EMT group here on campus. I'm a director for Soyeya, which is an African dance group here on campus. And I am also a UGA, which is Dartmouth's equivalent of a residential advisor for the dorms. And so those are some things I do outside of the classroom, and I'm super excited to take you guys around.
We always like to start the tour just by talking a little bit about Dartmouth's history. Dartmouth was founded in 1769, ostensibly with the purpose of educating Native students in this area. In our first 200 years of existence, we actually graduated less than 24 Indigenous students. But then in the 1970s, the college administration sort of looked back on that history and decided to recommit itself to that original founding purpose. Ever since then, we've graduated over 1,300 Indigenous students, which is more than every other Ivy League school. We also host luau, powwow, a number of other really big campus events every year to celebrate Native communities on campus and their continued presence and vitality. We have a Native American and Indigenous Studies program where you can major or minor or just take classes in if you'd like to. We have the Native American House, which is a living learning community specifically for Indigenous students. So that's some of the progress that we've made since then. Of course, there's plenty of progress left to be made, as always, but we always like to start the tour just talking about that history a little bit, making sure everyone knows that we're on unceded Abenaki land, and proceeding with the tour with all of that in mind.
So welcome to the Green. This is the physical and metaphorical center of campus. Physical center of campus because we can kind of walk around 10 minutes any direction, kind of be on the outskirts of main campus. 10 minutes in this direction would take you to the Connecticut River. 10 minutes that way will take you to our athletic fields and complexes. And 10 minutes that way will take you to the Life Sciences Center. It's also the metaphorical center of campus because a lot of our traditions are grounded in this space. Starting off with the fall, we have an annual bonfire in which first-year students have the opportunity to build a bonfire as tall as the tree line around us. They get to put their class year right on the top, and then they go to proceed and collect their classmates around the dorms and end up here, in which they get to do a lap around the fire. On the outskirts of that, you have alumni cheering them on, you have upperclassmen cheering them on, parents, family, friends. It was one of my favorite traditions as a first-year student just because, you get into Dartmouth on your own. But this is very much an opportunity for you and your class to celebrate that. And it's actually one of the last opportunities for you and your class here to do something together as one whole class until graduation, where you come back to the Green and graduate. And then we also have the Winter Carnival, and this is an opportunity to embrace all things winter. We have things like an ice sculpture contest. We have snowshoe races. Down by Occam Pond, we have an annual polar plunge where about almost 1,000 students each year jump into the pond and they swim across. Me personally, I didn't necessarily love the cold, and so I didn't necessarily partake in the plunge part, but as a part of Dartmouth EMS, we always are on standby to help with that, to make sure nothing goes awry. We also have an annual snow sculpture. I'd never made a snowman before because there's not too much snow in London, and when I first came to Dartmouth, I was super excited by the opportunity to make one. I remember making one and sending it in the family group chat and showing my family what I created. My mom proceeded to send me a picture of the campus snow sculpture because they sent it to our parents, and she was like, Michaela, look at this artfully made sculpture and look at what you made. And I can't lie, it was very funny, but it was also very wholesome, and it was definitely one of my favorite parts of the winter term. We also have the spring, where we have a big music festival called Green Key. And this is an opportunity, like I mentioned, to bring in big artists. And if you happen to be a part of a student band, you have the ability to be a part of Battle of the Bands, in which students then vote for their favorite band to open for that big artist, which I think is super cool. And at the end of the day, it's just a great opportunity for students to kind of embrace the turn of the weather, celebrate making it through the majority of the school year, and looking forward towards the summer. I also want to talk about where we are geographically. For some of you, getting to Dartmouth might be kind of challenging. You're probably thinking, Hanover? Wow, it's really far. It's not connected to much. And while that might be true, and yes, we do go to a rural college, in my opinion, I think we're still pretty connected. For example, we have the Dartmouth coach, which stops right in front of Rauner Special Collections Library. And that bus service goes right here from campus to Boston Logan International Airport and Boston South Station, making sure to stop at all terminals on its way. It also has a service to New York, and so if you're trying to get to campus, you can totally get on the bus, but it's also a great opportunity for students to get to the city as well. My friends and I would go for, the day to Boston. We'll get on the earliest bus and come back on that latest bus back to campus, and we're able to kind of get that city feel while also going to a more rural college. In terms of getting around in the area, we also have the Advanced Transit, which is a free bus service that takes you around the Upper Valley. It'll take you to places like West Lebanon, where there's Walmart, Target, any of your shopping needs, and you're able to kind of go and come as you please. But the center of Hanover is right on Main Street, where it's kind of boasting of lots of different small cafes and boutiques. We have really, really great restaurants. It is pretty small, but I think it's mighty. It packs a punch. If you go to the cafes often enough, they'll know your name and your order, and it really epitomizes going to a small college town. But I definitely feel like a Hallmark main character when I walk down there. Everything is really perfectly placed, and it's just a fun opportunity to go in with friends and just kind of get a bite or kind of go shopping if you need to. And so that's a bit about our traditions, where we are geographically, and now on for our next stop.
Welcome to Dartmouth Hall. This building right behind me is one of our main academic buildings here on campus. A fun fact about it that I always like to share is that it has burned down multiple times, but it's still here going strong. It just reopened from its most recent set of renovations this past fall. It's primarily used for language classes. We do have a language requirement here at Dartmouth that all students take 3/4 of a language other than English. You can test out of part of that by already speaking another language or by having taken some classes in high school. But regardless, most students will take a language class during their time here anyway, because we have a unique language teaching method that was invented here called the Rauner method. And how that works basically is you get into a smaller group of students from your class with an older student who already speaks the language, known as a drill instructor, who will lead you through a set of fast-paced, immersive oral exercises where you're put on the spot and have to speak in the language. It can be a bit scary your very first time, but it gets you speaking the language really, really quickly. And actually, the FBI uses it now to train employees who need to learn a language really fast, which very much speaks to how effective it is. So that's sort of a Dartmouth rite of passage, really fun and unique way of learning a language that was invented here. Beyond that, another key feature of our academic system here is the D plan, which stands for the Dartmouth Plan. We are on the quarter system here at Dartmouth, and the way that we arrange it is pretty unique, and that plan is called the D plan. So basically, as at any other quarter system school, you're taking 3/4 of classes a year out of those 4 quarters in the year. But it's not necessarily going to be taking classes fall, winter, spring, and then taking summer off. You might come back here and take classes for sophomore summer, which is a long-running Dartmouth tradition. And then you might take junior fall off or sophomore spring off, something like that. And the reason behind that is you can use that time just as you would any other summer break, just at a different time of year. You can go home, travel, get an internship. But the big difference here is with internships. So let's say you're applying for an internship in the summer. You're competing against every other college student in the country for those internship spots. But if you're applying for a spring internship, a fall internship, you're going to have smaller applicant pools and access to unique opportunities that other college students won't have access to because they're taking classes during that time. Also, wherever you intern, once you get to that organization, you won't be in a pool of dozens and dozens of summer interns, so you can develop a tighter network with the people you're working with and the people that you're working for, which will benefit you during your internship in the moment, but can also definitely have benefits down the line. So that's the key benefit of the flexibility offered to us by the D-Plan. The D-Plan also makes it super easy to study abroad. We actually lead the Ivy League in percentage of students who study abroad during their time here. 55% of our students will go on an off-campus program during their time here. 30% will go on 2 programs, 10% will go on 3 or more programs. I know people who have done multiple study abroads, a research internship, and taking classes on campus all in one academic year, thanks to the flexibility of the quarter system. I personally went to New Zealand and the Cook Islands this past January through March for the linguistics study abroad. For 6 weeks, I took classes at the University of Auckland with a professor there on Māori language and culture, and then for the 4 weeks after that, we were in the Cook Islands doing research work on Cook Islands Māori and language revitalization. So really cool opportunities that are very locally contextualized. It's about so much more than just taking classes in a room that happens to be in another country. And so I cannot recommend my personal study away experience enough, but there are programs associated with almost every other department at Dartmouth that you can think of, ranging from language programs to astronomy programs to engineering programs. Again, just about anything you can think of, anywhere you want to go in the world, you can probably go there with Dartmouth.
So we are standing here in Rauner Library, which is our special collections library here at Dartmouth, and it is filled with thousands of artifacts that are for us as students to use within our academic classrooms or just for our own interest to explore more about the history of the world or the history of Dartmouth, whatever it is that we are interested in. So I actually came here for one of my anatomy classes in my freshman year, and our librarian brought out textbooks of anatomy from 1400 until present day, and we were able to hold those in our hands, flip through them, and see a very literal progression of the human understanding of our own anatomy, which was incredible to see. Across the green, you'll see the Hopkins Center for the Arts, which is the hub for everything artistic here at Dartmouth. So there's a lot of different ways you can get involved. Firstly, through your majors, so you can get involved with our studio arts, music, or theater majors. If you don't want to commit fully to the major, that's totally fine. You can still take classes in any of those departments without being a major. You can also get involved in any of our many clubs or organizations that pertain to the arts, so whether that be a cappellas and choirs or dance groups or doing work in our jewelry or woodworking or ceramic studios. There's tons of ways to get hands-on experience with the arts on a daily basis here at Dartmouth. If you're more of a viewer of the arts, that's also fantastic. We have several student and faculty run productions that take place in the Hop every single term, as well as many art galleries that are all over the Hopkins Center for the Arts, as well as the Hood Museum of Art. And we also have a number of professional performances that take place on campus every single term as well. A couple of years ago, we had Yo-Yo Ma come and perform right here in Hanover, New Hampshire. And that's the school's way of making sure that we still reap the benefits of being in a cultural epicenter, maybe in a more metropolitan city, but we're right here in Hanover, New Hampshire. So that's some of the ways that you can get involved in arts here on campus.
Welcome to the Irving Institute for Energy and Society. This is a brand new building opened just over a year ago. It sits literally and figuratively at the intersection of business and engineering, in that it is, geographically speaking, literally right between the Tuck School of Business and the Thayer School of Engineering, but it also incorporates both of those disciplines into the study of different climate change and energy-based issues. So Irving runs all kinds of initiatives, studies, opportunities for students that relate to energy and climate as they pertain to our society today. So as you can imagine, that incorporates all of the scientific, mathematical aspects of energy and climate, but also the very human, economic, sociological, so on and so forth aspects of that. Beyond that, Irving offers so many opportunities for students, including energy immersion trips, where students will go to Appalachia or the Gulf Coast and do research on different energy topics. We're also home to the Sustainability Office here in Irving, the Dartmouth Sustainability Office, which runs a lot of initiatives here on campus as well. We're committed to 50% renewable energy by 2025 and 100% by 2050. The Sustainability Office also collects clothing and appliances that are left by students who move out of dorms, and they redistribute it to the student body either for free or for very cheap at the start of the next academic year, which is a really great way to reduce our waste streams here at Dartmouth as well. But beyond that, we always like to use this stop just to emphasize, the interdisciplinary nature of a Dartmouth education. Even if you're not working with Irving directly, every Dartmouth student you talk to has some kind of story about how their research or their academic experience here has truly been interdisciplinary. The example I always give is the linguistics research I've been involved in. I was a research assistant for a while on a project to create text-to-speech tools for Cook Islands Maori, which is a perfect example because when it comes to linguistics, you have the very human aspect of, again, working with the language, working with speakers of the language, working with different subfields of linguistics, but also the very real computer science element of that when it comes to creating these actual text-to-speech tools. So of course, that's just one example from my experience. But again, anything you want to do at Dartmouth, even if there's a ton of different disciplines you want to combine, you can absolutely find a way to do that.
Welcome to the Engineering and Computer Science building. So it's known as ECSE, Engineering and Computer Science Center. This is a really cool interdisciplinary space because there are a lot of different resources that you can use here that aren't just limited to the engineering and computer science departments. For example, we have the Magnuson Center for Entrepreneurship, which is a space in which students are able to kind of get the support they need to learn more about entrepreneurial endeavors. They're able to get alumni mentorship. They can get experiential learning opportunities in order to learn more about the business world, and even as far as getting alumni funding as well for those startup opportunities. We also have the Dolly Lab, which is the home of innovation on campus. They have different projects going on, they have project leads, and they work together in a team to kind of create different projects, whether those are based in computer science, for example, or even something as far as art history. But it's a really cool collaborative experience. So here at this stop, I'm going to talk a little bit more about academics more formally. So as you may or may not know, Dartmouth does have a number of graduate institutions here, such as the Tuck School of Business or the Gile School of Medicine. What's really unique to the Dartmouth experience is that despite having these graduate institutions, the college prides itself on the undergraduate learning. They've gone as far as to make that known by calling themselves Dartmouth College and not Dartmouth University. And they don't just say that for, admissions purposes, they actually do mean that. And I've seen that firsthand in my academic experience here at the college. Starting off with, our class sizes are really, really small. Despite having over 1,000 people, maybe 1,000 plus in my graduating class year, our average class size is around 20. Our student to faculty ratio is 7-to-1, and 99% of all classes are taught by professors and not by TAs. And I think that's a really cool part of being a Dartmouth student in that we do have that priority from our professors. They're mainly just undergraduate professors. They're not doing double time in both the undergraduate and graduate spaces. And so you're able to meet with them on one-on-one basis. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the formal classroom setting or the office hour setting. You can definitely reach out to professors and schedule meetings to kind of get the extra help you need, which I really appreciate. Additionally, when we come to this undergraduate learning experience, Dartmouth is a liberal arts institution. And so as such, we are getting both the breadth and the depth of knowledge as a Dartmouth student. That breadth of knowledge comes from our distributive requirements. And so these are core themes in which students have to engage with throughout their time here at Dartmouth. So for example, we have an arts distrib, we have a science of the lab distrib, just to name a few. And for some students, maybe a science of the lab distrib is a bit daunting. Maybe you didn't want to take a science course in college. However, there are an opportunity for you to not necessarily take those heavy STEM courses. You're just being asked to try something new and kind of think differently. So for example, you could take an environmental studies class called How the Earth Works and just kind of learn about the place in which we call home and what really does make the earth keep going. And that's a unique way for you to kind of learn something new. The arts distrib was something that was kind of scary for me. I personally am not that arty, and I wasn't sure how I could fulfill that requirement. And so I did a couple of research online, and I came up with Hip Hop in America, which is offered in the African American Studies class, or African American Studies department, sorry. And in that course, I was able to learn so much more about hip hop, about sound, about what it takes to make music. I also learned a little bit more about the economic side of hip hop. And it was a really cool course. And at the same time, not only did I learn something new, but I also got to do something I liked. I got to listen to some of my favorite music. And I also fulfilled a distributive requirement. I personally am a fan of the distributive requirements. If not for the distributive requirements, I wouldn't have taken an anthropology class and loved it so much that I've now declared in the anthropology department as my major. And so, like I said, the distributive requirements are kind of there to try new things, but also maybe you'll find a new passion like myself. And then I mentioned that depth of learning. The depth of learning is from our core majors, minors, and modified majors. I'm sure most of you know what a major and a minor is. However, a modified major is Dartmouth's way of kind of allowing students to create their own unique major. And so you're taking two distinct departments and kind of proving to the registrar why you think these two things are interconnected. So as an anthropology modified with global health major, I'm taking a number of classes in the anthropology department and a number of classes in the global health realm, and kind of supplementing those two together to kind of formulate my own major. As I mentioned, you do need to write a rationale to the registrar on how those two things are interconnected. And there is some stipulations for some departments in which they will not necessarily allow you to modify it with certain other departments. However, at the end of the day, if you are interested in two different things, you can always, get a minor in something or go as far as to get a double major. I will say being a double major or having more than just the major is relatively easy, as we are required to take around 35 courses in order to graduate. And so there isn't a limit in that. Most majors are around 10 courses, if not a little bit more. And so there is that flexibility, which kind of brings me to that day-to-day learning. So how many classes are we taking on a daily basis? In a normal term, students are taking around 3 courses, and that is the average. An overload course would be 4 courses, and you can only take a maximum of 4. And there's a limit to, of course, the number of 4-course classes you can take. And then you can take an underload course load of 2. Most students will take a 2-course term during their summer. And the limit to the number of 2-course terms is around 2 course terms. So again, the goal is to kind of get to that number 35. And upon that point, you would have reached the Dartmouth graduation requirements. I also want to speak a little bit about that undergraduate focus that I mentioned earlier. I mentioned those small class sizes, but I also want to talk about the more informal ways in which the college wants us to get to know our professors. They have a really unique opportunity called Take Your Professor to Lunch, where you're able to take your professor to the Pine Restaurant, which is just in town. The undergraduate dean's office gives you guys a voucher, and both you and your professor are able to go out to lunch. You can also invite another classmate from your course as well, and they too will receive a voucher, and you can go and you get to learn more about your professor, and your professor learn more about you. And I guess this really speaks volumes to the undergraduate focus, and not only that, but the community aspect that Dartmouth really prides itself on, not just informally, but also in our academic settings as well. So that is a bit about academics here at Dartmouth, the Engineering and Computer Science building itself, and I'd like to pass it on to the next stop.
This is Baker-Berry Library, our main library here on Dartmouth's campus. It's divided into 2 sections: Baker Library, the older side of the library built in 1929, and Berry side, the newer side of the library built in the early 2000s. A few things you can find on the Baker side of the library include this room right here, Rice Hall. It's a great collaborative study space. Other things you can find in the Baker side of the library include the Orozco Mural Room, home to the Orozco mural, The Epic of American Civilization, painted in the 1930s by Mexican muralist Jose Clemente Orozco, and it's on the National Register of Historic Places here in New Hampshire. Other things you can find in the Baker side of the library include the East Reading Room, the 1902 Room, 2 great study spots, our Dr. Gile Room, home to artifacts relating to Theodore Geisel or Dr. Seuss, and the Tower Room, a great reading spot on the 2nd floor with great views of the green. On the Berry side of the library, you can find tons of great resources, both academic and non-academic. Jones Media Center is a great place to check out anything tech-related: cameras, video recorders, audio recorders. Let's just say you want to record a video for class or start your own podcast. You can head over to Jones Media Center and check any of these items out for free. Other academic resources in the Berry side of the library include RWIT, which is our writing center, where students can get support on writing essays at any stage of the writing process, and the Academic Skills Center, where students can get help in different subjects from peer tutors. Non-academic resources that you'll find in the Berry side of the library include the Undergraduate Dean's Office, where students can get help from one of our 9 undergraduate deans. In addition to the undergraduate deans, all first years are paired with a faculty advisor who is there to help them during their first year here at Dartmouth with stuff like scheduling and classes. You'll also find the Student Accessibility Services Office, where students can get help with any accessibility issues they may face. In addition to Baker-Berry Library, there are other great libraries on campus as well, including Sanborn, which is a great reading spot and home to our English department, Sherman Art Library, where you can find books on art and art history, and Feldberg Library over in the Tuck School of Business.
So we are standing outside Fahey Hall. So along this street, which is called Tuck Drive, we're mostly surrounded by upperclassmen dorm buildings. For freshman dorm buildings, you're going to find them a little further towards the edge of campus. in a little more of an insular community. But the way housing generally works here at Dartmouth is in your freshman year, you're going to be assigned a random roommate within one of the housing communities. So we have 6 of those here on campus, and it's going to be a community that you are partnered with for your entire 4 years here. And that's going to dictate which dorm buildings you get to live in, who your roommates can potentially be, and it also gives you some sort of community that you can have intrinsic to your Dartmouth experience, regardless of club affiliations, Greek affiliations, or any sort of sports team that you might be on. And with those housing communities, you can do a lot of fun activities. They'll take us to Six Flags on Halloween. Sometimes they'll take us into Boston to go see sports games. And it's a really, really fun time. And it's really great to be able to bond with other people in your housing community, in your grade, through a shared spirit for this particular community. 90% of students will live on campus within their housing community for all 4 years. But if you would like to pursue some other options, those are available for you. Firstly, you can live off campus if you would like. Secondly, you can live in an LLC or a living learning community, and those are our identity and interest-based houses. So there's various houses all over campus that might cater to different language immersion programs or different cultural houses, sustainable living, a cooking co-op. They give you a little more independence and responsibility. And they also allow you to build really close connections with the other people living in those houses. And then lastly, you can live within your Greek house. So I'll take this opportunity to just talk a little bit more about what Greek life looks like at Dartmouth. We do have a large portion of our school affiliated with Greek life, about 66% of eligible students. That said, there are still a lot of students that are unaffiliated, and that is completely an option as well. But there's a couple ways that we do Greek life here at Dartmouth that makes it a little more inclusive and maybe a little less stressful. So firstly, we do have delayed rush. So you won't be rushing until at the very earliest your sophomore year. And so what that means for us is that we have our entire freshman year to make friends, to build relationships, join clubs, and really define ourselves as a Dartmouth student, completely unrelated to any sort of Greek space. And then secondly, we do have a frat band. So for the first couple weeks of your freshman year, you won't be able to enter any Greek spaces. And that allows you to alleviate some of the pressure and really bond with your freshman class, spend time with your peers, make a lot of friends, and kind of enjoy that transition from high school to college.
I'm standing on Tuck Drive right now to talk to you just a little bit about campus health and safety. So right behind me is one of our campus blue lights. The blue light system is just a campus security system where essentially if you're ever in a situation where you feel like you're unsafe and you need campus security, you can go press the button on the blue light, it calls campus security, they'll be there in under 2 minutes, and they'll be there to assist you with whatever it is you need help with. Generally speaking, I will say people feel like this is a pretty safe campus. I know lots of people who leave their dorm room doors unlocked at night, which technically speaking is maybe not the most advisable practice, but the fact that so many people do it definitely speaks to how safe people feel. It's also very common to leave your laptop somewhere in the library to save your seat while you go get coffee and come back an hour later and not worry about it getting stolen, which is really nice. So of course I can't speak for every possible experience, but as college campuses go, people do feel like this is a really safe one. Also, we're right up the road from Dick's house, which is our campus health clinic. Any student can go there at any time for any physical or mental health concern. If you don't have health insurance that covers you in New Hampshire, there is a Dartmouth student insurance you can be on. And if you're on financial aid, it's either partially or fully covered, which is really helpful as well. A common question I get is, where's your nearest emergency room? Aren't you in a small town? What if you need something that's not just fixable by the campus health clinic? So the answer to that is that we're actually 7 minutes down the road from DHMC, or Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center. It's the largest tertiary hospital north of Boston. Of course, hopefully you're not going to the emergency room, but if you're gonna live somewhere for 4 years, I understand that's a question that comes up. So there's your answer to that question. It's also really nice for pre-health, pre-med students because lots of them will intern, do research, or shadow there during their time here. So there are a number of benefits to that, but that's just a little bit about campus health and safety.
Welcome to Collis Student Center. So this is the home of a lot of student activities and different student groups. So I'm going to go floor by floor to best explain all the things that are offered in this space. On our lower levels, we have things like 8-ball hall, where there are a number of 8-ball tables, skee ball, a TV, and a foosball as well. So it's like a mini arcade, a space for students to kind of like go have fun and play some games. We also have Collis Market, also known as C Market. It's like a mini little shopping store. There's snacks, of course, there's household items, and just some things you can get on a grab-and-go basis. We also have on the bottom levels one Wheelock, which is sort of like a speakeasy vibe. They have a stage in there, and oftentimes they'll have mini karaoke nights. There actually happens to always be coffee and tea that's offered there that's completely free, and it's managed by the Collis student workers, and so that's the ground floor. On the main floor, we have the Collis information desk. We also have the Collis Cafe, which brings me to the topic of dining. So dining at Dartmouth, we have a number of different dining options. The main dining hall is the Class 93 Commons, which students have called FOCO. It's called FOCO because it's more of our more food court dining style options. So in there we have different stations. We have halal and kosher stations. We have a vegan vegetarian station. We have a main hot foods or entree station. There's a more bar food station with like fried foods. There's of course a salad bar, a pizza bar, and there's a dessert bar. There also happens to be an ice cream bar that if you come into FOCO at certain times of the day, it's even open in the morning, and so you're able to get ice cream in the morning if that's something you'd like. And so that's our main dining hall, FOCO. I mentioned the Collis Cafe, which is within this building. That's more grab-and-go style dining. They have things like custom smoothies to order. They always have custom stir-fry during the lunch hours and a college special. And during the dinner hours, they usually have sushi and custom pastas. And of course, the smoothies are still able to be ordered. And so like I said, more grab-and-go style. However, we also have a smaller cafes sprinkled around campus. So for example, in Bakerberry Library, there are 2 cafes. In the Irving building, there's another cafe. And then in the Hopkins Center for the Arts, which we call the Hop, there's a cafe known as the Courtyard Cafe, but students have called it the Hop, where there's custom salads and more, again, fried foods. You can kind of get like quesadillas and all of those fun foods. And so that's a bit on the dining. In terms of your dining plan, as first-year students, you are defaulted onto the Ivy Unlimited plan. This is a plan that has a number of dining dollars and a set number of swipes. However, if you were to go through all of your dining dollars at your first, breath of freedom, not to worry, you will always have swipes at FOCO. That's the name Ivy Unlimited because you have unlimited swipes in the FOCO dining hall. And so it's a bit on dining. And even though you're not able to ask me questions, I know what question is on your mind, and that is, how is the food? I personally think that Dartmouth Dining does a great job in order to make sure that we're all fed and that all dietary needs are met. I personally like the food. That's, again, my personal opinion. I can't speak on behalf of 4,000 students. But like I said, I think Dartmouth Dining does a good job to make sure we're all fed. So back to Collis Student Center and the things that are offered here. On our more upper levels, we have a number of different diversity offices, one of which is OPAL, or the Office of Pluralism. They're there to help make sure that, diverse groups are not only seen and heard across campus, but also feel supported. They help with different ethnic focused groups. They also help with different ethnic months, for example, Black History Month. But at the end of the day, they're helping to support students and, again, showcase those different cultures across campus. And so that's OPAL. I also want to touch a bit on some offices that aren't actually located in Collis, but are important to note at this stop. For example, the Office of Athletics. Dartmouth is a Division I institution, and so our athletes are competing at the highest level while studying at the highest level, which I think is super commendable. And honestly, I have to give props to them for doing so. And so we have those varsity teams, but we also have club teams as well, if that's something you're interested in doing. I personally am on club teams, and it's just an opportunity for you to kind of continue the sports that you love playing, while also having the opportunity to compete. We do compete against surrounding schools, and maybe if your club team does well enough, you can also have the ability to go to club nationals and also be able to travel beyond that New England area. If the varsity teams and the club teams seem like too much of a time commitment, or maybe you've just never played the sport before, you can always try to do intramural, which doesn't have any tryouts at all. And it's just, come as you are, try something new, and just kind of stay fit. On the topic of fitness, it is a requirement of the college that you do engage in some PE credit courses. These are outside of your normal academic day, of course. And so as a varsity athlete or a club athlete, you are achieving a PE credit for doing so. But if you don't want to go necessarily down the sports route, you can also engage in PE classes at the gym. So for example, we have spin classes, we have Pilates classes and yoga classes, and so you're able to kind of get your PE credit doing that. You can also join a dance group like I'm in, and that can also help you get your PE credit. The last office I want to mention here is the Tucker Center for Spiritual Life. And so I like to describe spiritual life at campus kind of like a buffet. If you are interested in it, you can stop and engage. If you are not interested in spiritual life, you can keep on walking. But there are different ways you can kind of engage in religious life here on campus. For example, we have the Rollins Chapel, which is a non-denominational space. It also does happen to have a Hindu temple, and that Hindu temple is actually one of the only Hindu temples north of Boston. And so I think it's really cool and important that Dartmouth's prioritized that and made a way for students to continue their faith here. There's also a number of prayer rooms scattered across campus. And so if you are requiring an opportunity to pray throughout the day, you still have an ability to do so throughout your academic day without having to necessarily go back to your room. And so there are more faith-based organizations here. So we have Hillel for Jewish students, there's Catholic-based groups, and they're at the Aquinas Center. There's also more Christian-based groups, Muslim-based groups, and so if there's a faith that you are interested in partaking, there probably is an opportunity for you to continue to do so here, which I really appreciate, that students are able to continue their faith or even, start a new faith or become a part of a new faith if that's something they're interested in. And so that's a bit on the Tucker Center for Spiritual Life, athletics, and of course Collis and all the things that are offered in this space. And now on to our next stop. So welcome to Robinson Hall, or students like to call Robo. This building is home to the DOC, or the Dartmouth Outing Club. The DOC is the oldest and largest collegiate outing club in the nation. They do all sorts of outdoor excursions, starting off with first year trips where around 90% of first year students will engage in that. This is an opportunity for first years to kind of make new friends prior to orientation. You're placed in a small group with other first year students, and they're called your trippies, and you have 2 upperclassmen leaders called your trip leaders. There's all different types of trips. You can go on cabin and kayaking trips. You can go on canoeing trips. You can go on hiking trips. If the outdoors is something you're not necessarily familiar with, you could also do a trip like museum exploration or community service. I personally was kind of intimidated by first year trips, but I still signed up because I thought I could try something new. So I was placed in hiking least strenuous. I had a really great time. I made a lot of new friends with my trippies. And of course, I got to do something I wasn't familiar with. And it was definitely one of my favorite experiences first year. Outside of first year trips, the DOC also does other trips throughout the school term and during the breaks. So for example, during the school term, they might do a weekend trip to hike somewhere in the Upper Valley. They might also do a kayaking trip, and you can just sign up for those. Or we have break trips as well. So for example, this past spring break, the DOC took some students to Hawaii where they did surfing. In the winter, they went to Colorado and they went skiing. So some of these break trips are at cost. However, there is opportunities for students to get financial aid in order to be able to engage in those trips. On the upper level of Robinson Hall, we also have the Dartmouth, which is our college newspaper. It's actually one of the oldest collegiate newspapers. They write all sorts of articles from things happening here in Hanover, within the Dartmouth community, to also things happening outside of that Dartmouth bubble. It's a really cool space, completely student-led, and it's really fun to see your friends' literary abilities in those papers. So that's a bit on Robo, and now on for our next stop.
I'm standing outside my favorite place on campus, the Aquinas House. At the end of every tour, I love to give my 3 reasons why I love Dartmouth, and most importantly, why I choose to stay. First is Dartmouth's location. Dartmouth is in a very unique location, in the mountains of New Hampshire. But Dartmouth is a school that takes advantage of this location, whether that's the DOC, first-year trips, the field research that goes on right in our backyard, or the fact that when I leave my dorm building, I can see a sky full of stars at night. The second reason is the academics. Being a liberal arts school, I knew that Dartmouth was a place where I was going to be challenged and encouraged to think outside the box when it came to my academics. Never would I have thought that you can combine art history and computer science, something that I'm doing right now. Lastly is the community, and the word that comes to mind there is excitement around Dartmouth's community. Whether it's rallying around traditions like homecoming weekend or winter carnival, or the day-to-day interactions with staff members, professors, and students, the excitement around Dartmouth's community really makes this place feel like home.
I like to finish my tour here in the Hood Museum of Art to talk a little bit about why I chose Dartmouth and why I continue to choose Dartmouth all these years later. And that really is because of the familiarity that you start to feel coming back to campus term after term. You start to learn all the slang, all the secret spots to spend time on campus, and you start to feel a real connection, not just with other students, but with parents, faculty, alumni. They really start to become your family. So every time I return here at the beginning of each term, it feels more and more like my home.
So at the end of my tours, I like to tell guests why I chose Dartmouth. As a high school senior, I chose to apply to Dartmouth because I saw they had a really strong academic rigor, they had the community feel I was looking for, and they also had the alumni engagement that I thought was really helpful. I remember coming to Dartmouth on a random visit and just walking around with my mom, and all these different students took the time to answer my questions and kind of direct us in the right way, and we just felt very welcomed from the beginning. I also really enjoyed the fact that Dartmouth as an institution prided itself on its financial aid and that need-based financial aid. So as a high school senior, that is why I chose to apply. Now, as a rising junior, I continue to choose Dartmouth every single day because of the people. While that might sound cliche, I definitely made some really strong friends and connections here, from my professors to people I've met in class. I can wholeheartedly say that I feel the community vibe here. If I'm ever struggling in a class, I know that I can always ask someone for help, whether that be my teachers or my peers. I also choose Dartmouth because of the alumni engagement that I mentioned. As someone who's not from the US, I was super excited to find that alumni wanted to assist students while they were here and help kind of get them to the levels at which they are at. I also continue to choose Dartmouth again because of that financial aid. I don't say that because I'm on Dartmouth's payroll. I say it because it's my genuine personal interest. As a student who is an immigrant who also happens to be from a single parent household, I'm able to afford Dartmouth because of the financial aid that stretches beyond just tuition and board. And like I said, I say this because I want students to look at Dartmouth and still apply and not necessarily see that big dollar value and be turned away. But that is why I continue to choose Dartmouth and why I chose Dartmouth as a high school senior. Thank you so much.
We're at Anonymous Hall right now, and I brought you here for the last stop of the tour to talk a little bit about why I chose Dartmouth. So Anonymous Hall behind me is home to the linguistics department, and I visited Dartmouth when I was a sophomore in high school during the summer, and we came here on a day where they weren't running tours, but we just explored the campus on our own. And while we were exploring the campus, I actually ran into Professor Stanford, who's chair of the linguistics department, and he dropped everything he was doing to talk to me about his linguistics research for an hour. That, simply put, was not something that happened to me at any other school that I visited. But Professor Stanford gave me an hour of his time, probably would have given me a second, even third hour if I didn't have to go. And so as someone who already knew that I wanted to major in linguistics, that immediately put Dartmouth at the top of my list. I knew if I was going to be studying linguistics, I wanted to be studying linguistics in Professor Stanford's linguistics department. On top of that, another factor that really drew me to Dartmouth was all of the access that we have to the outdoors here. The Appalachian Trail runs straight through campus. Dartmouth has their own ski hill. We're right on the Connecticut River. The list goes on. And as someone who grew up in Colorado, climbing mountains with my parents in the summers, that was something that I wanted access to in college as well. So between those two factors, Dartmouth really was at the top of my list. I applied here early decision. And now that I've been here for 3 years, I really can't see myself anywhere else. More than anything, as cliche as it sounds, my favorite part of Dartmouth has been the community and the people. I've made so many connections, so many friendships here that have been transformative for me in ways that I don't think I could have conceived of in high school. And every day I have an opportunity to learn something new about myself, the people around me, the world around me. And again, I really just can't see myself anywhere else. This truly was the right choice for me. So with that being said, thank you so much for coming on my tour today, and I wish you the best of luck with your college process.